If you walk into my second grade classroom during our daily Fluency group time, you might be taken aback by the level of noise and activity. But if you step closer and listen in a little, you will see much more. 3 groups of students are huddled around iPads with lyrics in their hands. As they sing along to a popular kid-friendly song, they stumble over a few words, and they circle those words on their lyric page. The students seem to be adding actions to their singing too, throwing their arms in the air at the crescendo of the music. Elsewhere in the room, 3 groups of student actors are moving around the performance space with their scripts in hand. As they read their lines with over-exaggerated expression, they add movements to match the story and to interact with the other characters. Students even seem to be coaching each other with tricky words. The whole room looks on the brink of chaos, which is the perfect way to practice fluency using an arts-integrated approach. This has been the norm in my second grade classroom for the past 6 weeks as I conducted my teacher action research. In this classroom, creativity is a requirement. The desks are arranged in a way that promotes collaboration and movement activities. And as a teacher, I have to be creative as well. Although my job is to teach the Common Core state standards, my passion is arts and education. So I am continually trying to find new and creative ways to integrate the arts into regular classroom teaching. Kennedy Center's Arts Edge describes arts integration as a way for students to collaboratively engage in the creative process in order to meet dual learning standards in a core academic subject and in the arts. An arts-integrated approach is collaborative and reflective, engaging and student-centered. It supports 21st century skills and is aligned to how students learn best. But it certainly doesn't fit into the neat little box of traditional teaching. One of the academic areas I have recently been thinking about is reading fluency. Years ago, when I began teaching, fluency was viewed as the primary indicator of reading ability and was assessed using the popular Dibbles test, which measured speed and accuracy of reading. But most researchers agree that speed and accuracy are just part of what makes a fluent reader. Fluency also includes elements such as intonation and expression, pausing appropriately for punctuation, phrasing and prosody, and even putting stress on important words. All of these little elements of fluency actually work together to support reading comprehension. As I thought about all of the parts of fluency, such as expression, intonation, phrasing, and prosody, I noticed how perfectly they fit with both theater arts and music. In theater, actors must use expression in order to convey proper meaning of the story. In music, popular songs become popular because of the natural phrasing and prosody that makes them easy and fun to sing. So I began to ask myself this question: what are the most effective strategies for integrating theater arts into a second grade classroom to increase student proficiency in reading fluency? At the beginning of this action research, I administered a pre-test to each student individually. The students read the same narrative reading passage while I listened and scored their fluency using the F&P scale for assessing fluency. I chose to use this scale because it included 5 different dimensions of fluency: rate, phrasing, intonation, pausing, and stress, where other scales included only 3 or 4. Then, for 3 weeks, all students participated in 2 arts-based reading fluency strategies: Reader's Theater and Sing and Read. During Reader's Theater, students worked in small groups based on their reading levels to create and refine a performance using their Reader's Theater script. Each group followed a weekly plan that included tasks such as tackling new vocabulary words, selecting and highlighting parts, adding actions, and providing feedback to peers about their fluency. Once each week, students were also asked to switch parts and read through the script as a different character, which was an exciting challenge for most students. During the same 3 weeks, all students also participated in Sing and Read. As I was researching arts-based fluency strategies, I came across an interesting strategy called Rock and Read, which I renamed Sing and Read for my class. This strategy is similar to karaoke. Students study the lyrics from a song while listening to the professional singers on the music track. Gradually, students begin to sing along and add actions too. The rise and fall of the melody showed students how to use proper intonation and stress. The smooth and expressive cadence in the music actually forced students to read or sing with beautiful phrasing. Once each week, students turned off the music and tried to sing a cappella, a moment that many students looked forward to. Fridays turned into performance day in my classroom, as students stood confidently in front of the class to sing their song or read their script. Using a simple spreadsheet, I assessed student fluency right as they were performing. The students hardly seemed to notice they were being assessed. They loved being on stage, the center of attention. After each performance, the students offered feedback on each other's reading fluency. We also took time to do a self-reflection of reading fluency and to set reading goals for the next week. One of the best things about collecting this weekly fluency data was that it helped inform my reading instruction for the following week. Take a look at this graph from week 2. You can see that students really struggled with pausing for punctuation. So I added some mini lessons the following week around how to use or read the punctuation. You can see in the graph from week 5 that students made significant improvements in pausing for punctuation. After about 3 weeks, as I reflected on my research question, I felt the need to make an adjustment in my action research. What I really wanted to discover was which arts-based fluency strategy was the most effective. But all of my students were participating in both strategies. So, for the final 3 weeks, the class was split into 2 groups. 14 students participated in Reader's Theater only, and 11 students participated in Sing and Read only. These 2 groups had a balance of ELL students, special education students, and reading levels. By splitting the class like this, I was able to authentically compare the effectiveness of both arts-based reading fluency strategies. One challenge that I faced when splitting the class in half involved logistics. I had 3 small groups participating in Sing and Read, but they couldn't all listen to their songs on my one classroom CD player. So to solve this problem, I linked each song to our classroom website. Then, each group could use an iPad, a splitter, and a set of headphones to listen to their group's song. Another adjustment I made at this point was to let go of leveling texts for students. Some of the literature I had been reading supported the theory that proficient readers could serve as models for struggling readers. The downfall for mixed-level groups, at least in Reader's Theater, was that some of my most struggling readers self-selected parts that were too far beyond their reading level. As a result of ending any sort of text leveling, there was a noticeable dip in fluency scores for many students during week 4, the first week of split groups. You can see evidence of this dip by looking at the green bar on this graph for intonation, pausing, and stress. Nonetheless, you can see how students really found their stride in reading fluency, and in weeks 5 and especially 6, their scores began to soar. By participating in daily fluency practice through Reader's Theater or Sing and Read, students developed a strong understanding of exactly what fluency is. They began to use the 5 dimensions of fluency in their vocabulary and group discussions. To visually compare the weekly fluency scores from the 2 fluency groups, I created these graphs. Each graph shows the fluency scores from the last 3 weeks of the action research, when students were participating in just one of the fluency strategies. You can see that the Sing and Read group made dramatic jumps in their fluency scores during the last week. When the second graders concluded their 6 weeks of fluency groups, I administered the post-test, using the same narrative passage as the pre-test, as well as the same scoring rubric. I felt that using the same passage for all students on both the pre- and post-test gave me the most valuable data. The students didn't get time to rehearse or read the passage, so their oral reading was a true measure of what they could do without rehearsal. The pre-post-test data shows that the Reader's Theater group scored highest in rate, pausing for punctuation, and stress. When participating in Reader's Theater, students certainly had many opportunities to stress important words, and were no doubt guided by punctuation to do just that. I was surprised that these students didn't score higher in intonation, as they generally performed their scripts with good expression. The data for the Sing and Read group revealed very impressive gains in reading rate, pausing for punctuation, and especially intonation. 0% of these students scored at mastery on the pre-test, while 64% of these students scored at mastery on the post-test. I wonder if the ability to hear professional singers performing the songs helped students to better understand intonation and expression. I was surprised that only 18% of the students from the Sing and Read group scored at mastery on phrasing. Looking at the combined overall pre-post-test data was really exciting. Clearly, this daily arts-based fluency practice positively and dramatically impacted student reading fluency. I plan on sharing this data with both colleagues and administrators because I think it supports the idea of arts integration as an effective instructional technique, at least around reading fluency. I am still curious about why students didn't make more improvement with their phrasing. During this teacher action research, my second grade students were all well aware that I was studying their reading fluency and exploring the effectiveness of the two strategies. They loved being in on the research. At the end of the 6 weeks, they started asking me, well, who won? Which group won? Of course, this kind of research isn't actually looking for a winner. So I showed them this graph, along with a few other graphs, and invited the students to make their own judgments about the study. The last piece of data that I showed to the students was their self-assessment graph. This data was by far the most nonsensical, fluctuating from week to week with no clear pattern. This is probably because the students are, well, students. They are the biggest variable in the classroom. I have a hunch that student mood and happiness levels were strongly reflected in their self-assessments. Although I didn't find this data to be particularly useful in my analysis, I observed that by allowing students the time to reflect on fluency growth each week, they seemed to increase their understanding of the different dimensions of fluency. Gradually, over the course of the action research, students became accustomed to using specific academic language when talking about fluency. In the end, I think that the results of this action research indicate that both Reader's Theater and Sing and Read are effective arts-based strategies for increasing student proficiency in reading fluency. Both strategies are highly engaging and collaborative, and they also align with the Common Core state standards for primary students. I can't wait to share this action research with other educators in order to shift the fluency conversation from simply rate and speed to more nuanced dimensions such as phrasing and prosody and intonation and expression. I also think it would be exciting to invite colleagues into my classroom during fluency groups so that they could see arts integration in action and experience how the arts have the power to engage and motivate even the most struggling readers.